like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Just awful, right? To think about a kid that young having to call 911 from their school because there's an active shooter. And that's exactly what happened yesterday at Abundant Life Christian School in Madison, Wisconsin. I mean, a second grader had to make that call. So we're doing a deep dive into this shooting today, try to figure out what exactly happened. We've got a Forbes article that just came out, one called Details, and an expert here to kind of help us understand it all. And this isn't just some isolated incident, right? This is just one of, sadly, so many school shootings we've already seen this year. So the article actually does a pretty good job of laying out everything that happened. Can you walk us through it?
Yeah, sure. It seems like, Monday morning at Abundant Life, it started out just like a normal day, but things took a really bad turn pretty fast. A student, a 15-year-old girl named Natalie Rupnow, she started shooting. 2 people were killed, a student and a teacher, and 6 more were injured, 2 of them critically. Before Rupnow, she ended up taking her own life.
You said that Rupnow, she was a student at the school, right? The article also said that she used to go by the name Samantha. Was that something people knew her by? That alias?
It sounds like it was, yeah. And that's actually a detail that might be really important as the investigators try to figure out what happened. They're talking to her family, trying to see, did anybody know she was planning this, especially her father, trying to see if he knew anything or saw any signs beforehand. And they're also looking into how she got a hold of the handgun she used.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a tough investigation, especially with her being so young. The article also mentioned that the ATF is involved now. What do they do in a case like this?
So the ATF, they're the federal agency that handles anything to do with firearms. In this case, they'll be trying to trace the gun. So, figure out where it came from, who actually bought it, and how it ended up with Rupnow. All that could really help them figure out, was there anything illegal about how she got it, or if someone was negligent in letting her get it.
There was one thing in the article that really stuck out to me. It mentioned a possible, an online manifesto. Can you explain a little bit more about that? What even is a manifesto in this kind of situation? And are they common in school shooting cases?
So a manifesto, in this case, it basically means she wrote something explaining, why she was doing this, what she believed, her plans, things like that. And sadly, yeah, they are becoming more common in these cases, especially as, these shooters, they want attention. They want to get their message out.
That is just, wow, chilling. The article even said this manifesto might be connected to the student who was killed. Do you think maybe this was targeted violence?
That's definitely one of the things they're looking into. The FBI is involved now too, and they're really good at figuring out, behavior patterns and threats and stuff. So they'll be key in figuring out if this was totally random or if he was going after specific people.
The article had a quote from Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers. He said, "There are no words to describe the devastation and heartbreak we feel today. Quote, as a father, a grandfather, and as governor, it is unthinkable that a kid or an educator might wake up and go to school one morning and never come home." I mean, it's just a really powerful statement. And sadly, we've heard it way too many times in the last few years. We've got the K-12 school shooting database, and it says there have already been 323 school shootings this year. How does this one in Wisconsin compare to the others?
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible reminder, right, that these school shootings, they're just a terrifying trend in this country. What's really unusual about this one, though, is the shooter's gender. Female school shooters, they're extremely rare. Out of all those 323 cases, only 9 of them were girls.
Wow. Yeah, that makes you wonder, are there other things going on here that are different from other shootings? I mean, the investigation's still going on, but there's already so much to think about so far. What are some of the things that stand out to you? What should we be paying attention to as this story develops?
Well, for me, a few things come to mind. First, that possible connection between the manifesto and the student victim, right? Mm-hmm. If that turns out to be true, I mean, we have to really start thinking about how we identify these kinds of threats in schools and how we stop them before anything happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Second, the investigation into how she got the gun, that's going to be huge. Figuring out where it came from could show us where there are problems in our gun laws and how we keep guns away from people who shouldn't have them.
Right.
And then finally, the fact that she was a girl, that's so unusual. That could really help us understand, what motivates girls to do this and how they end up going down this path. Maybe that'll help us come up with better ways to prevent this from happening again.
Yeah, those are all really important points. Sounds like this deep dive is going to be as much about like the bigger picture as it is about this specific shooting, huh? In a bit, we're going to take a look at that, the bigger picture of school shootings. But first, let's dig a little deeper into the suspect herself. The article said Natalie Rupnow. She went by Samantha sometimes. What do you think that tells us about, like, her mindset? What could make a 15-year-old girl do something so terrible?
It's tough to say for sure without, really getting inside her head. But using a different name like that, it could mean she was trying to be someone else, someone who, felt okay doing something so violent. Teenagers are already trying to figure out who they are, and that can be really hard, really confusing. So maybe this Samantha, this was like a dark side of herself, a side she couldn't let out in her normal life.
That's really interesting. It makes you think about all the pressure teenagers have these days, especially with social media and everything. Do you think that could have played a part in this?
Oh, absolutely. Social media, it can be good and bad, right? It can help you connect with people, feel like you belong, but it can also make you feel lonely, like you're not good enough. And it can make you really angry. We don't know for sure if Rupnow was on social media or if it had anything to do with what she did, but it's definitely something investigators will be looking into.
You mentioned that investigators are going to try and figure out, like, what led her to do this.
Yeah.
It seems like every time there's a school shooting, everyone's trying to understand why. It's like this big puzzle, and we're all searching for the missing pieces. What are some of the pieces of that puzzle usually?
Yeah, you're right. There's no one answer. It's different for everyone. But some things we see a lot are, mental health problems, access to guns, of course, and just like a culture of violence in general. And then also a lack of support, like people to talk to and help them through tough times.
Okay, let's talk about those one by one. You mentioned mental health problems. How often does those play a part in school shootings?
We don't want to say that everyone with a mental health problem is dangerous, right? But studies do show that people with mental health issues might be more likely to be violent. A lot of school shooters, they've shown signs of, depression or anxiety, or they've been really isolated, had trouble controlling their anger, things like that.
So it's super important to be able to see those signs. But what can we actually do about it?
The key is to catch it early.
Yeah.
Like schools need to be places where kids feel comfortable asking for help. And there need to be enough resources for mental health, therapists and counselors and things like that. And teachers and staff, they need to know how to spot the signs and what to do if they see something.
That makes sense. What about access to guns? I mean, the U.S. has way more guns than any other developed country. How does that affect this whole thing?
Well, it's a big factor, for sure. Studies show over and over that more guns means more gun violence. When it's easier to get a gun, there are going to be more gun deaths. And that includes school shootings.
So the debate about gun control, that's a big part of this. Some people want stricter gun laws, like background checks for everyone, or banning certain types of guns. Others say it's about responsible gun ownership and fixing mental health problems. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I'm not here to, say what the right policies are, but what I can say is that from what we've seen, we need to do a bunch of things at once. Mental health is crucial, yes, but we also need to make it harder to get guns, especially for people who might hurt themselves or others. And we also have to think about how our culture, like our whole society, plays into this.
That's a good point. It's not just about individual people, right? It's about the bigger picture. How does our culture affect this issue?
We live in a world where violence is everywhere. You see it in movies and TV shows, video games, even sometimes in the news and how politicians talk. When you see that much violence, you start to get used to it. It doesn't seem so bad anymore.
Yeah, it's like we've become numb to it.
Exactly. And that's dangerous. When you're not shocked by violence anymore, it's easier to do it yourself.
Yeah.
We need to really think about what we're teaching kids about violence, how to solve problems without hurting people, what the consequences are when you do hurt someone.
What about schools? Besides mental health resources, what can they do to make things safer?
Schools have a really important role in stopping this from happening. Things like controlling who can come in and out, having security cameras, trained security guards, those things can help. But they also need to create a good environment for the kids.
What does that mean, a good environment?
It means making a place where kids feel like they belong, where they feel respected, supported, a place where they can talk openly about things and learn how to handle disagreements without fighting. And if there's bullying or harassment, they need to know that adults will take it seriously and do something about it. Kids need to know that the adults at school are there to listen to them and keep them safe.
So it's about building a community. So kids don't feel alone, isolated. Because if they do feel that way, they might be more likely to get involved with dangerous groups or ideas.
That's right. A strong community can protect kids from those bad influences. When kids feel connected to their classmates and teachers, they don't feel so hopeless. They're more likely to ask for help when they're going through something tough.
So it's not just about, like, physical safety, right? It's about mental and emotional safety, too.
Exactly. It's about taking care of the whole kid, making sure they feel safe and supported in every way.
We've talked about a lot today. The shooting in Wisconsin, the bigger problem of school shootings in America, mental health, guns, our culture, the role of schools. It's a lot to take in. Yeah. And I bet some of our listeners are feeling pretty overwhelmed by all this. What can we say to them? How can we offer some hope when this problem seems so huge?
I get it. I mean, it's easy to feel like, what can I even do? When something like this happens. But we all have to do our part, to make things safer. Everyone listening, you can make a difference.
That's good to hear. I think it's easy to get lost in all the statistics and the big picture stuff. But, like, what can people actually do? What are some real things they can do?
Well, I think first you got to know what to look for, right? Learn about, the signs that someone might be thinking about violence or having mental health problems, and find out about the resources in your community, in your kid's school. Talk to your kids, see how they're doing, ask them what's going on.
That makes sense, especially for parents and teachers. But what about people who aren't involved with schools? Is there anything they can do?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You can speak up. Talk to your elected officials, let them know you're worried about gun violence and school safety, support groups that are working to prevent gun violence or raise awareness about mental health. And, just think about what you're saying, what you're doing. Don't be afraid to call out people who are, glorifying violence or saying hateful things.
So it's about building a better culture, right? Not just in schools, but everywhere. You mentioned earlier that the investigation is still going on. What are some of the things you're going to be watching for as we learn more?
I'm really interested to see how she got that gun. Was it bought legally? Was it stored safely? Were there any signs that people missed? Signs that could have prevented this?
What about that manifesto? If it's real, what does that mean?
Well, if it turns out to be real, we need to really look at what she wrote. Not to, make it a big spectacle, but to understand her, why she did this, what she believed, who she might have been targeting. That could really help us figure out how to spot these kinds of situations before they happen.
Every time there's a school shooting, it seems like everyone starts talking about solutions. Gun control, mental health, security in schools. What do we learn from all these tragedies? Are we doing enough to stop them from happening again?
The sad truth is, a lot of times people get really fired up right after something bad happens, but then it fades away, And nothing really changes. We've learned that there's no one easy fix. We need to do a lot of things at once. Fix mental health care, make sure guns are used responsibly, build a more peaceful society.
So we have to keep fighting, right?
Yeah.
Keep pushing for change, even when it seems impossible. This deep dive, it's been really heavy. I'm feeling sad for the people who died, frustrated that this keeps happening. But I also feel like maybe we can learn from this, Yeah. Maybe we can do better for our kids.
Yeah, I feel that too. We can't let ourselves get used to this, We have to keep asking why this is happening, who's responsible, and how to make sure it doesn't happen again.
We started this deep dive talking about that second grader calling 911. I think it's a good time to end by asking, what can we all do, starting right now, to make the world safer for our kids?
Just start talking about it, Talk to your family, your friends about gun violence and school safety. Listen to people who see things differently than you do. Learn about the problem, find out what resources are out there, support the groups that are working to make things better. And, most importantly, be kind, be compassionate, and fight for peace.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. I know it was a tough topic, but it's important. We hope this conversation will inspire you to take action, to be part of the solution, to help create a world where all kids can learn and grow without being afraid.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.